All right, time now for a look at the business news. Starting with Italy, the government facing a midday deadline to respond to the EU over its budget. Yuka Roye joins us in the studio to tell us more. Yuka.
It is certainly a preoccupation here in Europe. Italy's plan to increase its budget deficit to 2.4% of GDP next year has raised many eyebrows, with the EU calling it an unprecedented deviation from the bloc's budget rules. Moody's downgraded Italy's bonds to just a notch above junk status. Rome says it's willing to have constructive talks with Brussels, but it still gave final approval to the plan. Emerald Maxwell reports.
Determined to forge ahead, Italy's government says it's open to dialogue with the EU, but insists that its budget plan is necessary to boost growth and that it's doing what's best for Italians.
We recognize the European institutions and we will sit down with them to discuss the reasons for the financial measures that we put forward in this budget plan, measures that we are determined to bring about because it's very important for the Italian people.
The European Commission calls the populist government's budget an unprecedented deviation from EU fiscal rules and has asked it to revise its plan to push the country's deficit to 2.4% of GDP, 3 times higher than promised by the previous Italian government.
Our questions concern the budget overall, the financing of new measures, and the impact for the Italian economy and taxpayers in the coming years. The ball is now in the court of the Italian authorities, and the Commission will then make its decision.
Above all, the Commission says it wants to avert a crisis between Brussels and Rome. On Friday, Moody's downgraded Italy's credit rating to 1 notch above junk status. Data released the same day showed foreign investors had reduced their holdings of Italian government bonds by 67 billion euros since May, when markets first got wind of the coalition's programme.
And of course, we'll keep an eye out for the latest developments, more to come today. Now, let's look at the markets now. And European markets opened the week on a positive note, including Milan. If you can get the figures now. Milan opening up, as you can see there, 1.7%. The rest of Europe on a slightly weaker note, but still, Paris's CAC 40 and Frankfurt's DAX both up almost 1 percentage point. Fiat Chrysler jumped almost 7% at the open after finding a buyer for Magneti Marelli. In Asia, Chinese shares saw a strong rally this Monday, with the Shanghai Composite rising more than 4%. That's on the back of some reassurances from the central government that it will help private companies and lower taxes. Japan and South Korea were also trading higher today. Beijing's moves came after official data showed that the Chinese economy grew at a 6.5% annual pace in the latest quarter, which was its slowest in 8 years. China's stock market has lost 30% of its value since the start of the year, but Vice Premier Liu He said there was reason to be optimistic that the decline was creating good investment opportunities. Moving to the aviation industry now, and Canadian plane maker Bombardier has sued the aircraft unit of Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries over trade secrets. The lawsuit filed in Seattle claims Mitsubishi recruited former Bombardier employees who passed on confidential documents and data related to certification of aeroplanes in the US and Canada. Mitsubishi has been running the MRJ project since 2008, which would be Japan's first commercial jet since the 60s. But it has faced a number of delays, partly due to a complicated approval process in North America. Ryanair says its profits for the first half of 2018 fell by 7% to 1.2 billion euros. The low-cost airline has faced widespread strikes by pilots and cabin crew across Europe in recent months. The Irish company still maintained projections for next year's net profits. Now, the announcement comes after the carrier was criticised for its handling of a recent incident on board where a passenger made racist remarks and forced a black woman sitting next to him to change seats. The video taken by another passenger went viral, and the company says it referred the case to the local police. And finally from me, some people just can't get enough of Michael Myers and a good scare. Universal Pictures' latest installment of Halloween raked in an estimated $77.5 million at the North American box office over the weekend. The move marks the second highest opening for a horror film of all time, behind last year's It. The film is the 11th in the series, coming 40 years after the original. Nick Castle plays the role of murderous monster Michael Myers opposite Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. It has received an 80% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
I haven't seen it yet, but I heard you said the original was 40 years ago. I heard this remake, they have him with a hockey mask, but with a receding hairline this time. All right, Yuka Roya with a look at the business news. She'll be back.